Imagine the desperate final year of World War II on the Eastern Front. German forces are in a constant, grinding retreat. Resources are scarce, ingenuity is paramount, and survival is measured in hours, not days. Out of this crucible of desperation, a unique and fearsome machine was born, the SDKFZ 250-11s, a light armored half-track armed not with a machine gun, but with a heavy anti-tank rifle, and later, a modified version carrying the formidable 5 cm Pak 38 anti-tank gun. This wasn't a factory-line marvel, it was a field modification, a battlefield improvisation that tells a story of tactical necessity and frontline engineering. Today, we're diving deep into the history of this rare and potent tank hunter. Let's set the stage. The standard SDKFZ 250 was the workhorse of the German Panzergrenadiers. It was light, agile, and offered just enough protection to get infantry to the front lines, shielding them from small arms fire and shrapnel. It was a fantastic reconnaissance and transport vehicle. On the other hand, you have the 5 cm Pak 38. This was Germany's primary anti-tank gun in the middle years of the war. It was a powerful weapon, capable of knocking out most Allied tanks of the period, including the ubiquitous T-34, at reasonable combat ranges. But its weakness was mobility. It had to be towed into position, set up by its crew, and was incredibly vulnerable once its position was known. If it needed to relocate quickly, it was often abandoned. So, what do you do when you have a fast, lightly armored vehicle and a powerful but immobile gun? The soldiers on the front lines did what soldiers have always done. They got creative, they saw an opportunity. By mounting the Pak 38 directly onto the chassis of the SDKFZ 250, they created a highly mobile tank destroyer. This wasn't a formal top-down design process from the high command. These were field modifications, born from the urgent need to counter the endless waves of Soviet armor. The idea was simple but brilliant. Combine the speed of the half-track with the punch of the anti-tank gun. This hybridization created a vehicle perfectly suited for the fluid, chaotic warfare of the Eastern Front. It could perform shoot-and-scoot tactics with deadly efficiency. A crew could race to a forward position, find cover in a tree line or behind a ruined building, and lie in ambush. As an enemy tank column approached, they could pick their target, fire a devastating 50 mm round into the flank of a T-34, and then immediately reverse and speed away before the enemy even knew what hit them. This ability to strike and vanish was its greatest asset. It wasn't designed for toe-to-toe slugfests with heavy tanks. It was a guerrilla fighter on tracks, a phantom that appeared, delivered a fatal blow, and disappeared back into the chaos of the battlefield. Now, let's talk about Rarity. You won't find thousands of these rolling off assembly lines, because they were primarily field conversions. Each one was slightly different, a unique product of the workshop and crew that built it. Mechanics would cut away parts of the 250's superstructure to make room for the gun and its shield. They'd reinforce the chassis to handle the immense recoil. Photographic evidence of these vehicles is incredibly scarce. We have a handful of grainy black and white photos showing these machines in action, often caked in mud, covered in foliage for camouflage, and manned by weary-looking crews. Each photo is a treasure, a frozen moment in time capturing one of the rarest German armored fighting vehicles of the war. Some sources suggest an official designation. The SDKFZ 250-11s was originally for a version with a heavy anti-tank rifle, the SBZB-41. But the lines blur, and it's clear that frontline units took the initiative to upgun these vehicles with the much more powerful Pak 38 when they could. This makes tracing their exact production numbers and operational history a real challenge for historians, adding to their mystique. They existed in a gray area between official production and battlefield necessity. So, how effective was it really? Let's be clear, this wasn't a wonder weapon that could turn the tide of the war. By 1944 and 45, the Pak 38 was struggling against the newer, heavier Allied tanks like the IS-2. However, against medium tanks like the T-34-85 or the Sherman, especially from the side or rear, it was still very much a threat. Its effectiveness wasn't just in its firepower, but in its psychological impact and tactical flexibility. It allowed German commanders to plug gaps in their anti-tank defenses with incredible speed. A platoon of these could be redeployed across miles of front in a fraction of the time it would take to move towed guns. They were the perfect ambush predators, in the hands of a veteran crew who understood its limitations and exploited its strengths. The SDKFZ 250 with a Pak 38 was a deadly surprise. They could hold a flank, cover a retreat, or support a localized counterattack, providing a powerful anti-tank punch exactly where it was needed most, and then melt away before the enemy could bring their superior numbers and firepower to bear. Think about the crew. It would have been a tight fit. You have the driver, the commander, the gunner, and the loader, all crammed into a small, open-topped compartment with a massive gun breech and ammunition. They were exposed to artillery, mortar fire, and enemy infantry. The armor of the SDKFZ 250 was only meant to stop rifle-caliber rounds, so a direct hit from a tank or anti-tank gun would be catastrophic. The recoil from firing the Pak 38 in such a small vehicle must have been violent and disorienting. These were brave men operating a high-risk, high-reward weapon system. Their survival depended on their skill, their speed, and a healthy dose of luck. They had to be masters of camouflage and positioning, knowing that the first shot had to count, because they might not get a second. The legacy of the SDKF Z250 with the Pak-38 isn't one of mass production or decisive battles. It's a testament to the ingenuity and desperation of the men on the front lines. It represents a fascinating chapter in the evolution of mobile warfare, a bridge between the towed anti-tank gun and the purpose-built tank destroyer. These vehicles were born of necessity, cobbled together in field workshops, and driven by crews who knew they were piloting a glass cannon. They were a rare, fleeting, but undeniably potent presence on the battlefields of the Second World War, a perfect example of how, in the crucible of combat, soldiers will use whatever tools they have to create the weapon they need. This vehicle embodies the spirit of battlefield adaptation. It shows us that the history of military technology isn't just about the grand designs from engineering bureaus, but also about the clever life-saving modifications made by the soldiers themselves. It's a story that's often overlooked, hidden in the footnotes of history books and glimpsed only in a few rare photographs. But it's a story of innovation under fire, and a reminder of the deadly effectiveness of the right weapon, in the right place, at the right time. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into one of World War II's rarest fighting vehicles. What do you think of this battlefield modification? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more stories like it, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'll see you in the next one.